Spook,
Yes,
we notice you're wearing a big freeze beanie.
that's right.
Is that in preparation of our upcoming game against Melbourne on Queen's birthday?
No, it's more of a reflection of our ability to score.
Welcome to the Collingwood Rant. I'm Sly.
And it's only a debacle if you look at it from the water.
Spook.
Yes.
Apparently we lost.
Did we?
We lost on
What
Saturday.
did we lose? Credibility?
No, we don't have
Ability?
that to lose. We don't.
Skills?
Nope.
Certainly lost our ability to score.
So during the first quarter, you thought, oh, where's this been?
No, it was Bizarro Wood.
Yes, and then it just went back to shit.
Yeah, that was normal.
Now, a lot of the issues of Collingwood have been very well discussed.
Have they?
The poor skills, poor execution, the passionless...
Is this like a checklist?
Yeah, and we could do it, over and over. We've done it for...
Tick, tick,
Yep.
tick, 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 tick.
Did it last year to an extent, did it several years ago.
We're ahead of the game, you know that?
We are totally ahead of the game. I just want to mention a few things,
You should mention a few things.
and then we'll go on to the bigger picture of Collingwood. What do you think of Braden Maynard on Buddy Franklin?
It was funny, wasn't it?
I didn't mind that. I know there's people who complain about it.
Well, what did Buddy end up kicking? Two?
Two.
And who alternated with him? Moore had a couple of cracks at it.
I think they just rotated depending on where.
I mean, what's Buddy these days? He can barely bend over and pick up the ball, so why not
Still got
try
to.
Maynard on him?
I actually didn't mind Maynard because if you're going to use more in that attacking counter-attack role, then they've got to manufacture the opponents like Hawthorn would do with Josh Gibson and Essendon would do with Duncan Fletcher. They didn't go to the best.
Duncan Fletcher?
Dustin Fletcher.
Oh,
Yes, not the English coach.
You're not talking about his lesser-known brother, Duncan.
No. And, the coaches always put them on a lesser forward and had them provide the chop out and the counter attack and all that sort of stuff. And the only time they ever moved to the better forward is the better forward got like a big hold of the game. So I actually looked at that and thought, okay, that's some lateral thinking, which I haven't seen from Collingwood since, 2011. Lack of second efforts as the game wore on. They seemed dispirited as the first quarter was full of energy and then they just seemed dispirited. Tackles are constantly broken.
It's funny, I'll preempt this though.
I don't think
You will recall at the end of the first quarter, I messaged you straight away saying, are they going to be able to sustain this, or are they just going to do the usual fade into nothingness? And you replied that you've had about 74 other people message you exactly the same thing.
So
it's not like we're conditioned to expect this.
No. What is with the skills? You can't tell me... Now, this happened 214 to 217, so that's 88 games or something where we saw that.
It's a repetitive circle. It's a circle of Collingwood
We
life.
can't say that we're recruiting, drafting players with poor kicking skills. We did ask this to Nathan Buckley years ago, and he said kicking was a primary thing that they look for. Skills are appalling. What is it this club does which impacts the skills of players, not only this year, but 4 years ago, over that 4 year span?
Look, I have no idea. I mean, the way that they were freely running the ball and scoring quite well in that first quarter, you're sort of looking at going, well, maybe this is a statement game. They've been under the pump. They generally do play well against Sydney. They're going to go into state. They always come together and perform well. How do you just do it for a quarter and then just completely turn it off? What changes in their minds? It's not like Sydney came back full on attacking or anything like that straight away that sort of put some doubt into your head. It was just like, we'll just stop. We've done enough. Haven't we proved the doubters wrong?
Okay, I have a theory about this. So
Just one?
Yeah, just the one. And it extrapolates into a bigger story about Collingwood. This lack of the ability to score has been going for quite a while. People think, it's new. You go back to the semi-final last year against Geelong, we kicked one goal for 3 quarters. If you go back to the round 8 against West Coast, we kicked no goals in the second quarter and the third quarter. Round 5 against Essendon, we kicked 3 goals in the first quarter, 1 point in the second, and then we were 3-5 in the first. We kicked 4 points. Collingwood secured the round 3 when we were apparently up and running. We kicked 10-4 in the half and only 2-5 in the second half. And then Collingwood-Richmond, we kicked 4-1 in the first quarter, 1 goal, 2 in the second quarter, then 1 point and 2 points. So only 3 points for the rest of the game.
I guess we had a point to prove.
Yeah. Preliminary final against GWS.
Oh, wasn't that a good one?
We didn't kick a goal second and third quarter. And the qualifying final against Geelong, we didn't kick a goal in the second half. Now, I'm just, for the most part, other than the secure the game, I'm picking out games where we didn't score. There's plenty of games where the scoring just massively dropped off. In my opinion, what actually happens is first quarter we come out, we surprise the opposition, we're doing a few things that they haven't anticipated. They then adjust. and then they start applying pressure to our ball winners and all that sort of stuff, and the team just folds. And the coaching staff doesn't have the structure to work out how to get these players free again, so it just becomes a total mess for the rest of the game. Now, the few times where we come alive again, like go back to the prelim against GWS in 2019, with the last 15 minutes of the game, we just played this dominant game. It's when the players just go, that's it. Nothing to lose, just go for everything. And it actually gets some run happening. I just think that when the game is online and all the matchups are set and that, the both sets of coaches have worked out who they're playing where, our coaches always lose out, which means our players always lose out, which means our game plan implodes, which means our scoring dries up. So that's what I tend to think actually happens with us.
Well, at least we've got one thing going consistently well then.
And the other problem to this game I thought was really emblematic of it, it's been happening, is you have Dacos in the middle, Sidey in the middle. Dacos made his name on the wing last year. And you find him now, after being played as a defensive forward for the first few games of the year, being thrown in the middle, and now he's under a lot more frantic pressure yeah. Which means his disposal's being affected. Similar with side bottom.
Would you say that that's an acceptable part of his learning curve in this role?
No.
Because he can clearly find the ball.
No, see, what I would be doing if I was coach, hint, Jeff Brown.
There could be an opportunity coming up soon.
Yep, at Carlton. What I would be doing is I'd be playing side bottom and Dacos on the wings and be letting him dominate there where they're getting fed the ball more and they've got a bit more space to use the ball constructively. And in the middle, I'd be playing your Pendlebury's. I don't see the point of playing Pendlebury as a forward unless you're nursing him. I don't see the point of playing him as a forward. He has dropped off, but he's still your best midfielder. I'll be playing guys like Crisp or Maynard, DeGoey in the middle, the bigger bodies who can win the ball in tight, and they're just feeding it out to these guys on the outside. And this is the problem Buckley's always had. If you look at Treloar, we complained about it for 3 years. Why do you have him in the middle when he should be on the outside providing run and dash? And that's the same with Dacos and side bottom, I believe. Dacos might graduate to a centre midfielder, but at the moment I'll still be playing him on the wing where he can use his skills to actually construct offense. Now, I actually think this is really typical of the Buckley coaching regime, where you constantly see players in really weird positions where you're not getting the best out of them. You go back to, again, Dacos defensive forward, Phillips as a defensive forward. You get Magden as a wingman. It's like, why? Because he's got a big body. That's the whole logic behind that. You still want someone with skill. Magden, I think, went about 50% that game where he got 10 possessions in the first quarter. So I don't think they're placing the players in the right position to get the best out of them, and they're actually placing them in positions where it's actually hurting the team.
What evidence do you have to back this up?
It was about Saturday. You have the softness. They just don't seem physically ferocious anymore. And the thing that really irks me is the dead handballs. The amount of times you see someone like you get like a congested, an area of congestion, player gets the ball, a teammate standing like as far away as you are from me, and he handballs it to him. It's like, and you get no gain out of it. Why have you done that? And there's plenty of times where I've seen the player who gets it like going, why have you given it to me? I'm 2 feet away from you.
I cited an example during the game to you that there was a passage there where Dacos weaved through a couple of Swans players. He had Main off to his left and he's dished the handball. And without even thinking, Main's just given it back. And you could see Dacos, he looked bewildered on the footage. It's like, what the fuck? You just put me back under pressure. And he got swamped. And Main just went, I'll just be over here now.
Yeah.
And it was like, what was the point?
And I understand at times they tried to play that game style. The Bulldogs did it, Geelong did it years ago. Bulldogs at their best still do it, where they have those frantic handballs in congestion to fire it out and to find some space. But Collingwood unfortunately do that. They put someone under pressure who's not anticipating it, or they keep handballing and retreating to the point where like they are then defensively besieged, and then someone just goes, I'm going to boot the crap out of it anyway.
Well, it's that never-ending diminishing circle logic.
Yeah, it's a triangle that they do. And this is not new. And this is the thing that really is horrifying. It's like, this went on 4 years ago. So this is what bemuses me when people go, let's re-sign Buckley. These are not new things that we're seeing, and we're just seeing them again. And you watch it and you see there's no way that the current brains trust are going to find their way out of this. And people will blame personnel, go, because we don't have personnel. But it's like, well, you're doing this last year when you had personnel, and you're doing this 4 years ago when you had personnel. And I thought there's one typical play of Collingwood in the fourth quarter. Noble chased down Hayward on the wing.
Jeff Hayward.
Yep. football shits him. Great tackle, wins the free, and then turns to kick at the crisp at centre half back and misses him by about 5 metres. And it was like about a 10-metre kick, and it immediately put everyone under pressure. Let me ask you this: what the hell is wrong with Brodie Grundy?
Who was it? He was the opposition ruckman. Was he about 10 years old? And he probably, I'm sure Grundy won the hit out numbers, but I think he was the more effective ruckman on the ground. So yeah, I have no idea. And look, does this come back to that whole, where is the mindset of this side at, and that Grundy's just wearing that badge prouder than everyone else? I know you're close to throwing him out with the garbage, but I just can't help but think, if you get him working back in a structure and a supportive network that's going to start looking at and improving things, that he could be good, very good again.
Oh, I have no doubt he could be good again, but just given where Collingwood are...
But this is all up here.
Their build and all that sort of stuff, I just look at it and go, well, who has the most currency? I'd figure he's probably...
He's got no currency because he's got a $7 million price tag.
If you get someone to pick that up, and
who would?
Collingwood's going to pay the bulk of that. But if
they'll go as high as 8, they said.
And we talked about this a couple of years ago, where we saw sort of like, okay, there should be a squeeze coming along. If you had to lose one out of Grundy, Moore, and the Goey, who would you lose? And we said back then Grundy, and I still would say Grundy's probably the one. He doesn't look happy to me. And that's a lot of players. I mean, our intel is that Maynard's got 1 foot outside the door, which might explain his poor form. Buckley, can you ever hear enough of this? He said, "We came here to win and we felt like we had the plan to do so." I think the first quarter probably showed that what we put in place was going to trouble Sydney. The fact that they really only scored 10 goals in the end, defensively we held up for the most part. We're disappointed for not being able to stick at it and not being able to put enough chains together to be able to score or get field position after quarter time. But the reality is, we just had some players that dropped away, wasn't some bucks, and that's going to happen at times, especially with the young boys. We showed that we had the right plan and the right attitude, and I thought our work rate was consistent throughout the game. We just dropped away with the skill execution.
Where's the part about kicking 110 in 3/4 of football? But you can make comment that you're happy you kept the opposition to 10 goals. That's an achievement.
So, I'll get back to it in a second. We've had 6 debutants this year. I think a couple of them, like Porter, look pretty comfortable. Mm-hmm. I think a few of them, when they've had their chance, have looked really like they're not up to AFL level at this point. For Tom Wilson had probably a really difficult debut, that he was buried with a few Porter's kicks to him.
Hey, you bloke, take this.
But having said that, if you look at other guys like Sidebottom and Grundy, Maynard, they're looking terrible also. And that system is a reason that everyone suffered such gross depreciation and they look horrible. You go back to 2011, I recall when we smashed North by about 20 goals, Luke Rounds looked like a match winner. And I remember Danny Frawley was commentating going, "Oh, it looks like the Pies have found another one." And it just shows when you have system, when you have support, that players get appreciated or they find a way to play their role. Everyone at Collingwood looks like they have no idea what they're doing.
I mean, 3/4 of that game was just hideous to watch.
Oh, it was...
And normally, I guess, when you're in this phase and you've got kids coming through and, we've highlighted that we like Poulter. I like McCreary. I like his attack. And they're the ones you look at and you think, okay, well, there's something to build on here. But the rest of it just looks like there's no hope. As a supporter, you want to see where the light at the end of the tunnel is going to start coming from. At the moment, there's just dismal pitch blackness.
Well, the other problem too is I wonder... I'm sure there's some players, I'll take Chris Judd as an example, who they're going to have a straight line improvement because they were just so supremely talented regardless. But I always think there's players that they're at a sliding doors moment of you're in the wrong system or you're in a terrible team. Maybe development goes sideways rather than forward. And that's hurt by the fact that you're in a really shit system. Now, Collingwood's got relying so much on youth that I look at it and go, geez, you could really damage all these kids for the future when they're meant to be your future. And you're not getting as much support from the upper end because they're struggling also. And people complain about guys like Josh Thomas and, Hoskin Elliott and these guys continuing to get games and Callum Brown, but it's like, who else are you going to play? There's nothing left.
That's the conundrum.
And at the moment, you're sort of...
Who's in the wings? You got Greenwood and I think his other mate Greenwood.
Well, that's all it is.
And Cox, if you wanted to go there.
Yep. And, they'll probably have to go back to Cox at some point because just what they're doing, they've now sort of got this... Well, they've always had this sort of inexperienced underbelly, but it's even bigger now.
It's fully exposed.
Yeah. And you can see it's just sort of falling away. And I look at it and think... Sorry, I might get a little bit angry. I look at it and think about the arguments I had with supporters in the off-season who told me, it'll be fine, we'll be finalists. We've got guys like Braden Sy and Nathan Murphy coming up. They'll replace guys like Treloar and Phillips and all that. And they totally assured me that we're better off without these players. That these guys couldn't kick, so we're much better off. And now at the bottom has fucking dropped out. And no one there in La La Land can claim to, we're still going to make finals. Even the Little P president can't be thinking we're still going to make finals.
He's gone quiet, hasn't he, Little P?
To make finals, you have to actually have a game plan, and we don't have one. And you look at the legacy left by the administration to have put us in this position, and you think, how can anyone there in Collingwood land think the club is in charge of their destiny at the moment? Because to me, they just seem at the whim of fucking poor decisions and the repercussions from those.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it really, when you look at it, it's 22 individuals out there. There's nothing that's functioning as a team.
No, but it's the whole thing of how do you rebuild from this point?
I think you gut everything from the ground up. Is that the word? Then there's a thermonuclear device. I think we go away for 420 years and forget it ever existed, and then suddenly we have a resurgent moment.
But you don't have the currency at the moment, so you probably have to go to deficit.
Or we could do it this way.
Yeah, you probably have to go in the deficit. You will have to go in the deficit to get Nick Dacos. That's depriving you of the one thing you need to rebuild, which is picks.
Oh, that's it. And even we were talking about this before. You don't even have the money in the cap to go out and purchase free agents.
We've heard they're really tight, and we'll lose someone else.
Yeah, if the Maynard squeeze is not necessarily about money either, then who knows who else you're going to lose to get some money down, back rather. And
then it becomes this self-perpetuating vicious circle where it's like, okay, now you have less experienced players, which means you have to expose more youth, which means you're going to lose more, which means it's going to impact the development more, and for you've traded into the future draft for the next 12 years, and you're not actually getting picks to capitalise. No. It's like we're going to finish bottom 4 this year, in all likelihood, and we're not going to be able to benefit from like a bottom 4 pick.
No. And that aside too, where's the enticement for a player to come to us now? It can't be money, because we're clearly fucking showing the world that we don't have any, and we're still bleeding in that respect. There's no success coming in the next couple of years that's going to be immediate.
Well, you look at a few of the free agents. So Marcus Bontempelli, why would he leave a finalist to come to us? Patrick Cripps at Carlton.
Yeah,
why would he leave? I mean, Carlton's been on the outs for 100 years, but Collingwood's miles behind them. So Zach Merritt, Essendon traded out Danaher, Fantasia, and Sard last year, and they got 3 top 10 picks. Or they had 1 top 10 pick, and they added 2 more, whatever it was. And they got 3 top 10 pick players into their side, and they've did what we should have done, which we thought we were going to do, is get some high currency draft picks to bring some real high quality kids. No disrespect to the guys we got, but there's obviously top 10 picks, and then there's the rest. So why would Zach Merritt come to Collingwood? What would he be seeing?
There's no earthly reason.
Kristen Petrarca, he's signed for 14 years now, but why would he ever come to a Collingwood? And Melbourne finally got their shit. So Melbourne's sitting there 8 and zip, and Petrarca's going, Collingwood's sitting 2-7. I'll go there next year. This is the place. Why would anyone choose us? And free agents has proven that the best players, I know there's the guys we get, like the Quinton Lynches and the Jordan Russells and all that, but free agency, the best players, the Tom Lynches and all that sort of players, they are going to the best teams.
No, you've got to know how of attracting any of them. Or you're going to get in free agency those fringe players who are struggling to get games at a club. You'll probably see getting games at Collingwood as a absolute guarantee is the only enticement that we have.
Yep. Well, so the whole rebuild, the way they're moving into the future, they're vastly compromised for several years. And I think after they pick up Nick Dacos, providing he does want to come to the club, but after they pick up Nick Dacos, I think they just have to say, we're not trading a single future pick or anything like that. We're just going to take our medicine, be terrible, and then rebuild like everyone does. But then looking at that, if the next 2 years, if this year and next year are definitely going to be low finishes, which is what they look like they're going to be.
Yep.
You're going into 2023 with Adams and Grundy and all that, like in the high 20s in terms of their age. So how long do they last before your youth comes up and springs you up the ladder? And as Carlton's proven, you can get a lot of talent in there. It doesn't necessarily always click. I mean, you might not have the right coach. Melbourne did it for years. So it's like, where do you go from here?
And that's where it shows how vitally important it is to get the administration right now and getting that next coach selection right now. Because that's going to be your only fucking draw card to get some of those guys to pack up in a year or two's time and come to us. You have to clearly demonstrate you've got your shit together off field to make your shit come together on the field.
Well, if you look at let me ask you, now seeing, I guess, the repercussions of our terrible trade period and our terrible list management over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Now that it's...
Terrible's a pretty light word.
Yeah. Apocalyptic. Now that you're
Clusterfuck.
Now that you're seeing it all come to roost, I mean, how do you feel about, like, you get Eddie Maguire there who stayed for 23 years. It feels like when he was governing, it was almost like he'd become the one voice of the club. And everyone...
A dictatorship?
Yeah, I was just trying to be diplomatic. And it's
fucking dictatorship.
And you have Buckley, who's 10 years into his coaching regime, and people are still saying, "Oh, give him another chance, give him another year."
Still can't fathom that. I mean, really, I've been calling for a couple of years that it just smelled stale, and you need to have change. You can't stay in an organisation for 23 years and expect to be fresh, or next year's going to be different. And then the issue is sort of twofold here, is that Eddie stayed around too long, and Eddie put all his cards into the succession plan basket,
yep,
and made sure that it fucking dragged out for years until hopefully it suddenly fixed itself one day. And all it's done is push the malaise and the fucking broken nature of Collingwood into uncharted territory. I think this could almost be close to, and you want to make these things too negative and too dramatic, but this could almost be the lowest fucking Collingwood's dropped in how long? We're talking decades.
So what, in terms of finishing 16th, 17th?
No, in terms of...
Or just in terms of where the club stands?
Just everything is... they've just had this connected series of fuck-ups in the public place. It's still looking like a fucking rudderless ship heading for the nearest iceberg, and if that one don't work, those three other big ones there are something we can run into. It just looks broken. And
I'll say the one thing, in terms of the actual list management, you go to 2003, they lost the grand finals. The second grand final loss, Malthouse went to the club and said, "We're not going to win with this list." And they said, "Okay, let's rebuild." And if you look about the next 3 years, they had picks 7, picks 2, pick 5, pick 8, pick 10 with a trade when they traded Tarrant. And the following year, pick 11, which they got side-bottom. So they had a pretty good hand over those 3 years.
But the club also too. I mean, apart from that list element, the club was humming beautifully.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to say that, like, they had a really good draft hand to rebuild. They had a really good nucleus. They had guys like Dane Swan, Travis Cloak, Nick Maxwell, Harisha Lumumba, Alan Toohey. They had these guys already there, and then all those picks they nailed, except for Chris Egan. All those other picks they nailed. It became a nucleus of that side, and then they picked up guys like Dawes and all that sort of stuff. You don't have that draft hand now, and you're not going to get it for like 2 years. You get back to 1999. I always say, like, people go, Malthouse did a great job of bringing the Wooden Spoon team to a grand final in 3 years. But if you look at that 99 list, you had Nathan Buckley, best player in the league, Scott Burns, Paul LaCuria, pick 1, pick 3, pick 1 in the PSD. You had the 2 Rockers, Paul Williams, Simon Prestigia. You again had a really good nucleus. And then 2001 they traded really well. And then you go back to 86, which is their lowest ebb financially, when the bank suggested that they closed their doors.
Yeah, the banks were onto something.
But they had a really good sort of nucleus. And then they had the 1987 under 19 team win the flag, and that became the core of their side going forward. So it always periods where they've been really low. And you get back to 76, it was just really not great coaching, and the club wasn't very stable, which is why they won the Wooden Spoon. Tom Murphy came the next year, and it was effectively the same list, but he brought them to the grand final. I don't see that here. I don't think they don't have the draft hand in the short term, and their trading into the future has totally compromised that. They don't have a great nucleus, I believe. I think their players are a little bit too top-aged, whereas you go to 2004, 2005, Cloak and Swan, they're in their early 20s, Heath Shaw, early 20s. Now, you got Dacos and Quainer, they're probably the greatest or brightest hopes in terms of skill levels, but then you look at guys like Adams and all, they're 27, 28, so in a couple of years they're going to be gone, and that's a big section of that side. I have no confidence that Moore or DeGoey will stay once their contracts come up. If we're looking terrible and they're offered $1 million elsewhere, why wouldn't they jump? And in terms of the administration behind it, it's just, there's this thing now where, who knows who's going to be in charge next year? You have this Mark Corder presidency at the moment, then you have Jeff Brown saying he will challenge, and then there's rumours of a third party also running. So it's like...
Is that us?
Yeah, it should be us. But it's it's really unstable period in every area, and you don't know how much money they've lost through sponsorship, through repercussions of the Do Better report, through the trade debacle, because I know some members just said, that's it, I'm not going to follow this club if you're treating players like this. They've messed up on pretty much every level of club management, team management, and you still have fucking people telling me, hey, it's all right, you're being negative. It's like, hey, you're third last. If you can't see that all these actions have led to this, just 2 years after you made a grand final, how is that not evidence that you've fucked up things?
No, and I don't think they're even finished with this yet. Yeah, there's this rumour that's come out today that Collingwood's pursuing Lepic to be an assistant coach to Buckle with an extension. I mean, fuck, why? What, because year 11 and 12 will be fucking magnificent? I mean, the thing is, too, the rumour mill is telling us that Sanderson and Harvey have been told that there won't be a job there next year. Oh, fuck that. Geez, that must come as a surprise. I mean, actually, though, when you look at it realistically, can we actually afford to pay out Harvey's long service leave? He's probably into us for about 24 years' worth of salary on the way out. It's just like, that's no fucking way going to placate the supporter base to leave Buckley in for another year or two and just bring in some... I mean, granted, Lepic is a good selection coming in, but what's he going to fucking help?
Well,
is he going to come in and say, well, Bucks, you got it wrong for 10 years, how about we do things this way? If that's the case, why don't we fucking switch roles? Switch roles.
Good old switch roles.
You fucking swatch roles. But what's the point of it, though?
But you go back to 2018 and Justin Longmuir came in and he did exactly that. He rejuvenated the structure. I mean, Braden Maynard has that article, which I read from a few weeks ago.
But even if he does this and it works out to be successful, it's just showing that the Buckley decision's wrong.
This is the big problem with me. If you look at all the premiership coaches and a lot of the leading coaches over the last 20, forever really, every premiership coach brings something new to the game. So you look at Hardwick, Richmond's won 3 flags. They play that chaos football. It's really dynamic, anarchic, and it's beautiful to watch too. You look at Alistair Clarkson. He had the rolling zones which he introduced. You look at Bomber Thompson, he had the handball, and also Luke Beveridge. They sort of had these fast handball, zipping game plans. What's Buckley brought to the AFL? It seems like everything he's done in terms of on-field strategies, he's just cannibalised from Geelong and from Hawthorn during their heydays. It's not like he came in, I know he was credited with bringing in the press in 2010, even though it was there in 2009 before he arrived.
Maybe he was talking about journalists.
But you look at Malthouse, the 1 year he had success at Collingwood is when he developed this new game plan. It was like the press. And, I know in 2009, and he said it himself, Malthouse, he goes, we had to find a way to beat Geelong, so we had to find something to devise. And I heard 2009 prelim, he really thought we were a chance against Geelong, and they smashed us by 14 goals, and he was really shattered after that, and he realised, I really need to change. Buckley's never shown any of that. He's continued to push this game plan that we're seeing now. If you're honest to people watching, you can't tell me you didn't see this 2014, 15, 16, 17. It's exactly what was happening back then. It was even exactly what was happening in 2012, 2013. He said then we had a much better list who at least through talent carried us over some results. This is exactly what we're seeing. It's galling that you think this is still going to click at some point. It's still just fucking effort. It's just effort. If we get the effort right and all that sort of shit. The reason they're not getting the effort right, and this is my opinion, the club can say, no, you're totally wrong. To me, they so often look really tight and flat. And I believe that's why suddenly skill errors creep into really skilled players' games. I mean, Isaac Quaynor looked terrible on Saturday. He's a really skilled player. Dacos didn't look good. I mean, Pendlebury went at about 55% in terms of disposal efficiency. Why all these players suddenly dropped off? There's a lot of factors, but I think in terms of how they're being prepared for the game, They are really struggling because of the way Collingwood is presenting them.
It has to be that there has to be wholesale changes in a number of areas coming. At the moment, they're in a holding pattern, circling their own shit. And there's just...
I think they're swimming in their own shit.
And you look at this subjectively each week. I mean, where do you see them digging themselves out at the moment? If things stayed the same, we're fucked.
Yeah.
There has to be change coming, and that brings uncertainty. And look, uncertainty can be a motivational thing if you start seeing some positive directions into where you take your uncertainty and try and turn that into something positive. At the moment, we've just got fucking nothing. They've really got to come out and make some sort of announcement about the coaching panel soon. Now, I don't mind if Buckley sees out the rest of the year, but there needs to be something made soon. If they're bleeding surely off the fucking the fact that no one's going to the footy anymore. Where are you going to attract sponsors with this sort of crap? And you're going to put your faith into someone who's been there for 10 years, for another 2 years? Again, it's that whole belief that it's suddenly going to come good. And how many fucking years of seeing it not come good do you have to keep failing at it?
Well, as you said often, 218 was really a false dawn for him.
Oh,
and
it was.
It's painted over a lot of cracks, and you even hear the media sort of go, well, he was a great coach in 218. What's changed in 2 years? It's obviously blah, blah, blah. And again, like, it's not personnel, because he had the personnel 219, 220, and we're seeing this shit happen back then. So you can't just put it down to personnel. Obviously, you're going to struggle more with a young side, but we were doing this with qualified sides. So you get Matt Rendell coming out and attributing the 218 success to Justin Longmuir and the way he helped Collingwood set up. If you're looking at it and sort of go, well, let's bring in some more assistants that are going to help Buckley. It's like, well, maybe instead of getting a really qualified assistant to come in and help Buckley, the better thing is to just get rid of Buckley and get the assistant with all the ideas and put him in charge.
But even that notion in itself is offensive. He's been there for 10 years. He shouldn't need, at this stage in his career, assistants to help him become a better coach.
No, look, I don't mind bringing in assistants.
Teague, you can understand, as a fledgling coach, needs some support around him. But we're now trying to paint the same scenario for a bloke who's been doing it for 10 years.
I don't mind some of it, because I always look at it from the point of view, and I've always said this, if I was running a club, as I should, Jeff Brown, in terms of my assistants, half of them would be guys who have been in the system forever, or former coaches who have no aspiration to be senior coaches. They're just happy to be assistants forever. And the other half would be young, aspiring guys straight out of the system, out of players, and who want to be coaches and they're fresh and come up with new ideas. And the thing with any long reign is you are going to get stale time. So I don't mind bringing people in to challenge you and go, look, this is the way you've been playing the game. I've actually played it. This is my experience. These are the things I think you can look at changing to galvanise your game. So I don't mind that. See, but that goes back to the problem. You've had Harvey there the whole Buckley tenure, and you've had Sanderson there from about 215, 216. So it's like you're not having any injection of new ideas there. No one's coming to Buckley and saying, hey, let's try this. You know, to me, it really feels like he has a coaching panel where they're just yes men. And if you've never changed anything, why is anything going to change? You look at Melbourne, they brought in Mark Williams. Hey, suddenly they're, on top of the ladder undefeated. You look at Sydney, who's had a guy who's been coached longer than Buckley's been coach of Collingwood. They brought in Don Pike because they said, well, look, we've got the defensive down, right? We're not so great at the attacking stuff. What have you got for us? And Sydney's ball movement looks a lot better. But us, things are clearly in decline the last 3 years. And it's like, well, let's just stick with the guys we know. Because they've never fixed it, but apparently they will now.
It's like, last year they moved on Hocking. Hocking was supposed to be a breath of fresh air for the midfielders. And then he's just quietly moved along. And they kept Sanderson and Harvey as preferred coaches there. But we haven't heard any reason beyond the fact that he just suddenly left before COVID.
That was the COVID cuts. It was the financial cuts.
But still, if you're performing well in that role, surely you need to let people know the reason why they've been let go.
Oh, look, if I was Eddie Maguire, because he was president at the time, and this is the one thing that frustrates me, is I would map out the structure for the way I want the club or the team operated. And one of the things would be, you know what? I'm happy for the senior coach to coach for 25 years, but you cannot have the same people around him the whole time. We need evolution, we need change, we need fresh ideas. So when I see a Luke Hodge come out of his playing career, I'd say, look, go target him. He was a great on-field general. He's going to have something to bring to this. Bring him in. I want a constant change every couple of years. I want someone new coming in who is really, breath of fresh air and is challenging you. I don't care if you have arguments with him. You know what? I actually prefer that because it shows me that there's a conflict of ideas which is going to stimulate greater ideas rather than just someone, Buckley going, well, how about we kick it 28 times across the ground? And Sanderson and Harvey going, well, that's a good idea, Bucks. That's worked for us for the last 10 years. Let's keep doing it. Have someone who's going to challenge the thought process. And that's the way I structure a club in terms of the coaches and that. I wouldn't want the same panel and wouldn't want the same administration, which is now a problem with Mark Corder and it's the perpetuation of the Maguire administration. I wouldn't want the same people in charge fucking ever. And if there is going to be some people who provide that continuity, again, Malthouse is a 12-year coach. You look at Kevin Sheedy, he was coach for 25 years or whatever it was. I'd be getting people in to go, hey, every couple of years, I'm going to change the people around you. Unless you're winning flags like Hawthorn won 3 in a row, then I'd be going, that's the only reason I'm ever going to keep this group together.
But even with that, coupled with the fact that you can give them extended tenures, there has to be fucking periods of success.
Yeah, well, that's what I just said,
And that's not just fucking dishing soup out to people. It's actually winning a fucking flag. You can stay for years if you win flags.
Well, that's what I just said. I mean, it's like Hawthorn. If you win 3 in a row, then fine. COVID.
Yeah.
You keep the people in charge because they know what they're doing. But at Collingwood, you've had one grand final shot in the 10 years you've been there. That to me really shows, hey, you're not good enough. This coaching staff's not good enough. It's not... And I'd seriously be... I don't know how they reviewed a coach. I don't know if they just sort of sit him down and go, do you...
But even
how do you think you're doing?
Well, no, sorry, just to go a step backwards for a second. I read today that...
you play for Collingwood.
Since the grand final, our average scoring margins...
It's dropped.
Is about 55 points that we managed to score in those finals since. It's a poor fucking return.
Yeah. Well, you go back to 2018 where you had that mid-sized forward line and it was just... so chaotic that opposition didn't know how to match up on it because they didn't know who was going to pop up. And then you get what they've got now and it's like, well, you're moving the ball a lot more slowly. You don't have a focal point that I can see. And the thing is, which I'll say in defence of Mason Cox, people were criticising Mason Cox for years. Oh, you're not doing enough. Okay, we're seeing DeGoey get shut out of games. We're seeing Darcy Moore get shut out of games. These are two supremely talented players. Now, do we say they're just shit also? Or do we actually draw the wider conclusion that, hey... the delivery is terrible and it's shutting these players out and they can't do anything. And you go back before Mason Cox, Travis Cloke suffered the same. Under the Malthouse, he looked like his great centre-half forward. Under Buckley, he looked like this plodding full forward who was constantly struggling against free forward opposition.
You look at the destruction of Henry. I mean, if players like Cox and when Moore was thrown up forward can't get their fucking hands on the pill because of the poor delivery, you're crucifying this poor kid. Now he's looked good in his little forays in VFL, where he's obviously the matching is a little bit closer to his level at the moment, but he's getting destroyed in the 2 games that he's thrown out there.
Yeah.
That can't be fucking good for his confidence.
And the other thing I want to say too, in relation to all the people go, oh, you got to play more down back. Well, okay, down back. What the fuck did he do? He hasn't changed the game.
Well, he kept a margin to 10 goals.
Yeah, well, it's like...
Or the scoring.
You're showing the whole system not working. And if you're expecting individual players to solve it, it's not going to happen.
But again, it's like I said before...
And it goes back to system.
You just keep highlighting individuals.
Yeah.
There is no team functioning there at the moment. And each week it gets less and less. We're only probably 1 or 2 games away from that big fucking blowout.
I think it'll come this week. I think the blowout will be...
And we need the blowout, I reckon.
This whole thing of and this really shits me too. It's this whole thing in defence of Buckley. It's like, whoa, they haven't lost any games by a big margin, but they're still fucking losing. So who cares? If you can't win, who cares? If you just lost every game by 6 points, you'd be going, oh, that's okay, because he's only losing by 6 points. It's sport. It's competitive. You're meant to win. That should always be the aim, to win. And we're not losing by big amount. I really couldn't give a shit. What has happened now is a travesty in terms of, and I don't blame Buckley exclusively. This is a travesty of so many people's making, going from the coaching to the other coaches to the football department to the administration to the former president who oversaw this over a long period and somehow just believe we'll get it to work. And the one thing too, which really pisses me off about the supporters who kept assuring me, hey, we'll make finals this year, we're great. They suddenly changed the narrative. It's about playing the kids. It's playing the kids. It's like, but you told me we're going to play finals. Oh, no, it's a rebuild. It's like, hang on, the club didn't say they were rebuilding. They just said they're rejuvenating their list. As of a couple of weeks ago, they were still expecting to play finals, according to the president. So, this is what they've done constantly during the Buckley era. It's like, I say, he was handed a premiership list.
Oh, sorry.
And it was like, oh, they're going to play finals. And I recall Gary Pert saying, I believe Buckley will be a premiership coach within 3 years, whatever. Didn't work out. Then they're 4 years out. Are they rebuilding? Are they just topping up? We don't know. They don't actually send a clear message. Then they pick up like Wells and Maine. It's like, well, that's what you do if you want to top up. So you think we're close. And then you get to the grand final. It's like, well, we get Beams are topping up. And then it's like, well, let's cut the list by 6 players, counting the retirees and the guys that went out. So hang on, that's like an act of rebuilding, but you're still claiming you just rejuvenated the list. I don't know where this club stands or where it stood in the last 10 years. It's constantly a different message they're sending out to their public. I don't think they actually know. I think they're constantly reacting to what they see within their own football department, and they're trying to adapt to it and get on top of it. And they've never had a clear system, never had a clear plan. They've never actually did what Malthouse did, as far as I'm aware, in 2004, where he went to the admin and said, this list isn't going to do it, we need to rebuild. They might have done that theoretically and said, let's rejuvenate the list. But I seriously, and this really pisses me off, so we're not doing ex-player watch anymore. I think I've read the stats out enough this year to prove, these three guys would be fucking pretty useful in this side. And you would be, instead of 2-7, you'd probably be 4-3, at the very least. You would have won games against Essendon. You probably would have won against Sydney. You would have beaten Gold Coast. So I'm not going to do it anymore, because seriously, if you're out there thinking, no, we don't need those players, and you're seeing us as 16th, you're a fuckwit. And that's all it comes down to. How no one in the football department looked at the list and said, okay, you have 18 experienced players. If you get any injuries to those 18, we immediately have to go into the youth and we're going to be totally exposed. How no one could do that equation is bewildering. Because it's really clear when you look at that list, and particularly when you look at that list and you factor in the fact that Greenwood's sort of getting toward the end of his career, Maine's getting toward his end of his career, Josh Thomas has struggled for a couple of years. Hoskin Elliott struggled for a couple of years. Callum Brown has really struggled to find his place at AFL level. So you've got already like 5-6 players there in your starting 22 who are struggling. And then you have to factor in, if you get injuries, which it's Collingwood, you're going to get injuries. So you then have like an equation of about 10 to 12 players who you need to replace with youth. And which is what they've done. They've brought in Keane and Henry, and they've rotated all these guys, and you have this really soft underbelly now, and it's like how no one looked and said, we could be in a lot of trouble if we have 3 or 4 injuries. Unless someone said it, and then someone else in the admin, like, we get injuries. Don't worry about it.
Deluded wood.
Going into this game against Port Adelaide.
Yeah, what about it?
Do you care?
No.
You only see him get smashed?
Look, the blowout has to happen.
Oh, look, I think
whether it's this week or next week, it's going to come, and it's going to have to be the catalyst for change.
I actually think it's funny because the whole jumper debate is going to give them motivation to squash us.
And then they performed average this week. They lose, didn't they?
They lost to the Bulldogs. They were okay. They sort of had a poor start, and then they fought their way back into it. And sort of Bulldogs just got on top in the last quarter. But that was still pretty good. I mean, they're looking like flat-track bullies, but hey, you're facing a fucking spud this week, so you could hit them for 6. I tipped Port Adelaide 67 points.
So what did I tip Hawthorn to beat North by? 80 points?
Yeah.
I reckon Port will win by 80 points.
Oh, good one. Any final thoughts on Collingwood, Eddie Maguire, Nathan Buckley, or the future going forward?
No, I just want to have a shout out to the social media guy, and I appreciate you've probably got the world's shittest job at the moment. But there is a clear fucking misreading of the room going on out there. I mean, case in point, Hoskin Elliott was named Player of the Round this week. William Hoskin Elliott. So the first comment is we're going to harken back to 2018 for him. Well, great, because I constantly need to be reminded of the wonder years. And the second thing is, I don't think this bloke got more than 4 possessions and a half a footy after that. And that's your fucking player of the round. You don't have to speak. Saying nothing sometimes is the best course of action. Because all you're doing right now, and you've obviously got fucking rules you have to follow with this job, is you're riling the room. And the room doesn't need riling any further. That'll come when Buckles is announced as a coach for another 2 years.
I have one final thought.
Only one?
Yeah, I do. So, how old's your son Ethan?
He turns 9 soon.
And how does he feel about following Collingwood?
He's almost ready to walk away. He's made a couple of statements. He cracked it during the game on the weekend and said, "I'm done." I mean, like at that age, I'd probably been through about 14 losing grand finals, and I sort of stuck with him. And the hard thing is you actually, with all seriousness, you sit down and you talk about this is the situation. This is where you want them to be, because when they get to where they are one of the great clubs to follow. And that's not just talking about getting behind them when the times are good. That camaraderie, the way that you bump into someone in the street and you talk, and when you find out they're one of you and they follow Collingwood, the way you can light up and you talk. At the moment, all that's been taken away from us. There's just this mire of shit, and we've all had enough of the shit, and we want to move on from the shit, and the club is just pulling us back into it.
Oh, look, my biggest problem here is this cataclysm of failure is entirely the club's own design. And people, the idiots, the zealots who will sell it as, we're proactively trying to rebuild and shit like that. And it's like...
I'll just get out there and support them.
Yeah, and I really hate that because, I mean, the one mistake, in a lot of arguments I have with people about the trade outs play, it's like, look, I don't give a shit. Trade anyone. Trade who the fuck you want. Mm-hmm. But don't treat them the way you treated those players, particularly Treloar. Don't give them up for nothing. I mean, this is the big problem with Stevenson. He gave him up for, pick 26 or whatever. 2 players, Stevenson and Atu for pick 26. If you gave him up for pick 10, I'd be sitting there going, okay, I don't like it, but, at least you got something for it. You basically delisted him. You effectively delisted him. You treated the Treloar deplorably. And I look at stuff like that. Players within the ranks, and then Buckley's going, oh no, the senior playing group didn't want Treloar, and all this shit that he's spouting to the media. And you have the senior playing group must be sitting there going, what? They treated these guys like that. How are you going to treat me when my contract comes up? Or if my contract... And how's the guy like, if Patrick Cripps is out there going, I'm looking at changing clubs next year, and his manager goes, well, Collingwood's interested, and Cripps goes, well, so I can trade me in 2 years when it becomes inconvenient. Fuck that.
Hey, you'll be paid well, though.
By 2 clubs. You've damaged the playing group. You've damaged the camaraderie of the site. The football department, Collingwood.
Oh, the whole kit and caboodle.
So it's like, I don't, when you shit, whatever, it's fine. There's ebbs and flows in football. But everything we're seeing now is a design of the club's making, and their, I don't know what you'd call it, their short-sightedness and their deplorable list management over 5 years. Because the thing with this list management, what we saw last year didn't just happen. Someone didn't just open a spreadsheet and go, Eddie, we're a couple of $1 million over the limit. We need to cut some... This would have had to be 5, 6, 7 years.
Does anyone know what a minus sign means?
This would have had to be 5, 6, 7 years in the making. And how this is happening, and then you're going, well, let's go get Dane Beams. Let's re-sign Brodie Grundy to 7 years. Making these decisions when you know the cap is inflated and you have this back-ending issue, it's just totally short-sighted and it borders on fucking negligent.
But you also take a step backwards. So a lot of these problems came from apparently making the grand final activated a number of triggers clauses in contracts. What the fuck would have happened if we won the grand final? Surely they would have been greater clauses triggered in. We would have imploded within 12 months at this rate.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, and we know pretty much for a fact that Ben Reid was one of the top paid players in, I think it was the second last year of his career at Collingwood. This is after he's played like 9 games in 3 years. So I don't know how they did this back ending and all this shit, that they fucked it up to that extent. I don't understand why they signed people like Phillips to 500 grand. Stevenson in his third year, they re-signed him to 600 grand. Given, again, you knew what your salary cap was like. Why were you making these decisions which have totally exacerbated the problems of the club? And then and they don't get enough of a mention, but, you lost Beams to retirement, you lost Langdon retirement, you delisted Charenberg, you lost Varco and Reid to retirement. That's 5 senior players off the top of my head. I'm sure I've probably forgotten someone else. You have someone like Broomhead and all that.
Oh, it was a fair chunk of money that you should have gone back, and we still had a fuck.
And from what we hear, it's still full, and someone's going to be sacrificed at the end of this year. And it'll be this thing, if they lose someone this year, if they push someone out, the supporter unrest right here, it's just going to go thermonuclear, because it's going to be like, you sold a message, or you sold 5 different messages last year after the trade debacle, but you sold a message, we decided to face the pain up front. if we have to face more pain, and of those 5 I just mentioned, should have had James Ash, who went a year earlier, so 6 senior players. If we have to lose someone else, then you're just you've proven you're full of shit. And I, as a free agent, would not want to come to this club, given the list profile now. I'd just be looking to go, no. The only way I'd want to go to this club is if I was at some club where I was playing in the reserves every week because there's 4 people in front of me for my position, and it's just like, well, like the guys who left Richmond, like Oleg Markov and all that, they were struggling to get games at Richmond. They went.
That can be the only one.
But they're not free. They're not free agents. They're just going for the greater opportunity. I think Brandon Nelson for free agency, but he's not going to change the fortunes of the club in Collingwood's position. So what we're seeing now, it's just short-sightedness, which has totally fucking asphyxiated us, and it's going to make us struggle moving into the future in the short term. And I think it's still going to get uglier before it gets better.
No, I mean, this is really... Collingwood is now like the Star Wars sequels. There's no redemption on Earth that can save this. It's got to be rebuilt.
Oh, but it can't be rebuilt by the people involved at the club.
No.
Outside of Graham Ryan, who just showed up last year.
There is a giant bulldozer that just needs to plough through it, and it just has to have a plan sitting there on the outside, and I'm sure there's going to be some tickets put together in an EGM in the near future that has to have that as their cornerstone. That you out, start anew.
Mark Corder showed some contrition after he became president, where he said, we would have been good to get Grundy for a lesser term and all that. So he sort of...
Yeah, but all those statements were just echoing what the general population of supporter unrest is based on. But you're loosely, without any fucking conviction, addressing them for the sake of, well, we hear you, but fuck it, we're not doing anything.
But do you think he would have won a lot more fans if he came out with conviction and just said, look, our predecessor messed up some stuff, we're going to try and fix it. We're sorry we're in this position. And if he came out with a little bit of...
I wouldn't believe it. It'd be a hell of a lot better.
But he came out with a bit of passion rather than that tone of diplomacy. I mean...
But you can't. I mean, look, you're part of the problem, mate. You've been there 14 years.
I would rather that, I know they're not going to do it, but I would rather he just came out. When I said it last year, when they messed up the trade debacle, I would have rather someone just came straight and go, look, we're sorry. We messed it up. We went for this period of contention. It didn't work out, and we totally messed up our figures. And they took total ownership of it. They sort of did it in a really loose way, but then they tried to massage it, and we were rejuvenating the list, and you had all the different people selling different messages. Again, the club has, by their own, I don't know, their own, like I said, their own short-sightedness. I'll use them with short-sightedness because I don't want to use terms that will get me sued. Their own short-sightedness, they have put themselves in this position where I think they're fucked for the next 3 years at least.
Absolutely, at a minimum.
Anyway, that's it from us for the cheery rant. Subscribe, like, comment.
Things can only get better, as Howard Jones once sang.
Yeah, hit us up on social media, and we'll try and get back to you. Thanks to people who are communicating with us on Twitter. Loving your tweets. It's good to actually see, because you're getting a lot of people coming out and saying there's a problem with this club.
Yep.
And you're getting a lot of people saying, which totally endorse, you're getting a lot of people saying, it doesn't make me less of a supporter to offer criticism of the club.
And don't be afraid to express your opinion. Whether you're deemed to be negative, the fucking club needs to start listening.
Oh, look at the people on Twitter. A lot of the people on Twitter who are phrasing their displeasure, they're doing it constructively, they're doing it diplomatically. Yep. They're not just saying, this club is a prick or whatever. They're actually explaining the issues.
It is a prick, though.
It is a prick. I was going to use another word, but that's reserved for someone else called Slobbo. Anyway, we'll be back next week.
Because we're idiots.
Yep.
Right on the lens, too. That means that we're going to get pumped this week.
Probably means that they erased all the footage.
You broke my camera, though.
Yeah. Later.